America is losing its smartest people. By the numbers alone, 80% of postdoc researchers now report they are looking for positions outside of the US, the number of US researchers applying for positions in Europe has tripled, and just across the border, applications from American scientists looking for jobs in Canada rose 41%, while Canadian scientists looking for jobs in the US fell by 13%. Federal agencies lost over 10,000 doctor-level STEM and health experts over the past year, hospitals are now running low on skilled practitioners entering the field, and even in purely profit-driven enterprises, people like AI researchers are, rather loudly, finding opportunities abroad. These are also only the positions that we know about. And well, this shouldn't really be happening, right? The United States has always attracted the very best and brightest people to live and work here, and it's done that for a number of logical reasons. We have some of the best research institutions and schools in the world, we have a robust funding system to finance cutting-edge development, and honestly, the not-so-secret reality is that very smart people can normally make a lot more money here than they can anywhere else in the world. Even amongst other high-income economies, startup founders, scientific researchers, academics, and medical practitioners have typically been drawn to America because there are more opportunities to get their work funded, and also to be funded for their work. Now, I know what you were thinking. And yes, obviously, a lot of this has to do with things like laxer regulations, over-financialization, and a healthcare system that prioritizes profits over outcomes. And well, yeah, you would have a point. But putting aside the social problems these may cause for a second, American pharmaceutical labs, financial firms, hospitals, startups, big tech, and the venture capital ecosystem all genuinely present amazing financial opportunities to highly skilled people. But the thing is, none of this has really changed. We still have all of the systems, alongside the good and bad that comes with them. What has changed, though, is that despite the chance to make a lot more money, smart people from across the world aren't coming in nearly as fast as they once did. And perhaps even more worryingly, the smart people that we do have are moving out. It doesn't sound great, but perhaps this could all mean more opportunities and training for the people who are already here, right? Well, we will get to that. But also this raises the question of, where are these people going? And what are they actually taking with them?
Americans are leaving the United States at record levels, in large part because of divisive politics and an affordability crisis.
A poll from the journal Nature earlier this year found that 75% of researchers in the U.S. are considering leaving the country.
We've lost more than 15,000 scientists from the ranks of the federal government. We're losing our scientific base.
New breakthroughs in powerful, low-cost Chinese AI models are sending shockwaves through Washington and Silicon Valley as Chinese companies continue to narrow the AI gap despite vast differences in computing power and financial resources.
Okay, so obviously the most pressing question would be to ask, why is this happening? Or rather, why is it happening now? And well, yeah, while it would be easy to blame everything on the current state of America, it's worth at least acknowledging that most other countries are dealing with their own problems as well. And in the grand scheme of things, we still have it pretty good, especially for people at the top of their respective field. And yet people who theoretically have the qualifications to live and work almost anywhere they want are still reversing a very long-standing trend of gravitating to the USA, and they are doing it for two reasons. The first is that despite spending hundreds of billions of dollars on R&D every year, we are very selective with where we actually spend it, and overwhelmingly, it goes to projects with a clear path to return on investment. The private sector now funds about 3/4 of all American research and development, and even amongst what's left, federal agencies only fund around 40% of the country's basic research. The problem this creates is that private for-profit companies have no incentive to fund the risky, foundational work that doesn't have a clear path to making, well, a profit. This means something like climate science, which might actually stand in the way of corporate profits, hasn't been well funded compared to opportunities in places like Europe. Last year's White House budget request for the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration proposed exactly $0 for climate research, which would theoretically impact the ocean and the atmosphere. At the same time, for comparison, the EU set aside almost 5 billion euros of its current 2-year research budget just for climate work. For the most part, this just simply means that, at least for the next few years, if a climate scientist wants to continue their studies, they are effectively being forced to move. The other thing is that people in these fields are a lot more open to moving because, for better or worse, it's kind of a part of the job. Someone who just finished a PhD in one of these fields is effectively eternally at the whims of research funding. They kind of go where the grants go. And especially in less profitable fields of science, less and less of that money is in the USA. Now, to play devil's advocate, maybe pursuing science only when it is profitable still means we keep all of the research that will actually contribute to economic development, right? Well, we will get to that assumption. But even if it was completely true, it would still be very short-sighted. A lot of research doesn't seem profitable at first, before it turns out that it really is. Radio astronomy was developed to get more accurate images of the cosmos, before the same tech ended up giving us Wi-Fi. Number theory experiments from the 1970s gave us modern cryptography, which enables end-to-end encryption, secure online payments, and logins. There are also infamous things like GLP-1 drugs, which trace directly back to government-funded researchers studying Gila monster venom. There are literally hundreds of these examples, because we don't really fully know the applications of frontier research until we have done it. Nobody ever budgets for the lizard spit economy. Neil deGrasse Tyson may be best known as that famous science guy, but he is also a legitimate physicist who has recently spoken about this trend in his field here on YouTube. His video actually came out as we were writing this one, and he has basically said the same thing, which is probably worth more from someone with one foot still in the door of academia, so I will leave a link to that below. More broadly though, other countries have seen all of this happening, and they are capitalizing on our complacency by setting up grants and systems to make it easier for these smart people to just make the jump in the other direction. Some are even specifically headhunting researchers, offering them comparable salaries, fully funded labs, and stable positions overseas. Canada launched a $1.7 billion Canadian dollar program at the end of last year built to recruit more than 1,000 world-leading researchers, complete with money for their labs, their equipment, and their grad students. The EU announced a €500 million Choose Europe for Science package aimed at researchers looking for the exits, and applications from US-based researchers from the European Research Council's most prestigious grants went from 23 to 114 in a single cycle. One university in the south of France even set up a program actually called Safe Place for Science, subtle, and got 298 applications from researchers in America, including people at Stanford, Berkeley, and NASA. And of course, above all, China has been aggressively pursuing talent, especially amongst its own nationals who often study in the West and then stay in the West. For at least the last century, the USA has been by far the largest hub of research and development funding anywhere in the world by some margin. But as of 2 years ago, adjusted for purchasing power parity, China has now overtaken us, and they are now channeling more resources into R&D every year than we ever have. Now a quick interlude here is that purchasing power parity accounts for the lower cost of most things in China. $1 million in China just buys more equipment, man-hours, and other resources than it does here in America. Without that adjustment, we are still technically throwing more money at R&D, but in plain English, China is throwing more actual resources at upgrading their tech tree. Anyway, back to it. Today, there is a big push to get a lot of the students that left China to study in places like America to come back to China, along with all of the skills and expertise they have gained from research and work at Western institutions. Often, this incentive is as simple as just a big pile of money, but again, more on those in a minute. The point is that if the brain drain trend that has served us for the better part of a century actually reverses, that would be catastrophically bad. Being at the cutting edge of a broad selection of sciences has been instrumental in America's outperforming economic growth, and well, our military dominance over the same time period too. Competing in either metric without the foundation of world-leading science is kind of like trying to compete in AoE 2 when your opponent is 2 ages ahead. It's gonna go badly. When scientists fled Germany in the 1930s and landed here, American patenting in the fields they joined jumped around a third, and the effect lasted well into the 1950s and arguably set us up for our dominance over the next 50 years. But well, the thing is, to be fair, none of this is new. Countries from across the world have been well aware of brain drain to America for a long time, and they know how much it has helped keep us at the forefront of most fields and how much it has hurt their own development. They have also always done what they can to get their smart people back. But it's time to learn how many works to find out why they might finally be succeeding. This video is sponsored by Upside. Gas prices keep climbing, groceries cost more every trip, and eating out isn't getting cheaper. But what if every time you filled up, grabbed groceries, or went out to eat, you were earning cash back on all of it? That's what Upside does. It's a free app with over 100,000 locations where you earn cash back on gas, groceries, and dining, the everyday essentials you're already spending money on. Here's how it works. You open the app, claim an offer near you, pay with any card you want, and you get paid. You get cash back you can actually use deposited straight to your bank account. It's not points or credits that expire. And it stacks with whatever credit card rewards and loyalty programs you already have, so you're earning cash back on top of your cash back. Checking Upside before I fill up has just become automatic for me. Upside has given back $1 billion to its users. To find out how much you could earn, download the free Upside app and use promo code HowManyWorks to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas using promo code HowManyWorks. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to get started. Okay, so America has stopped paying for a lot of the science that doesn't pay for itself. But the second reason smart people are leaving is a little bit more personal. It's absolutely true that highly skilled professionals can earn more in the USA than they would typically be able to almost anywhere else in the world. But just because they can doesn't mean that there is a guarantee that they will. And look, the frustrating part about this whole topic is that it is incredibly complicated. Even if we are just looking at their overall net economic impact, a PhD student on a roughly $30,000 stipend might end up contributing more to a country than a headhunted AI researcher being offered a 9-figure signing bonus. In typical research roles, the compensation is not that great. The averages just get pulled up by the outliers that get poached away into private industry, often in narrow verticals that just happen to be jazzing investors at that point in time. Even a couple rungs up the ladder, the official NIH pay floor for a postdoc is about $63,500 a year, usually located in a city where that doesn't go very far. The joke of a physicist going to work for Lockheed Martin to pay off their student debt exists for a reason. Physicists in the private sector earn roughly 30% more than the ones who stay in education. The defense and aerospace jobs pay even better still. And that's ignoring the people who just go and take a job as a quant on Wall Street.
So you're a rocket scientist. How did you end up here?
It's all just numbers, really. Just changing what you're adding up, and to speak freely, the money here is considerably more attractive.
The problem is that at these more basic income levels, quality of life in America is statistically worse than in a lot of other countries around the world, especially when the research mandates living in high cost of living cities like Seattle, Boston, San Francisco, or DC. There is the classic argument that even Mississippi, our state with the lowest GDP per capita, mogs most major European economies on paper. But you can't eat productivity. And for people on average incomes, public transport, walkable cities, public healthcare, and just generally lower living costs mean they can normally afford a more comfortable life while pursuing their academic careers. And since a lot of American academic talent moved to the US in the first place to further their studies and achieve a better quality of life, they are naturally more okay with moving abroad again to continue the work and achieve a better quality of life. This used to literally be our selling point to the best and brightest people around the world. But other countries are just becoming more competitive, especially in the fields we aren't really valuing. So yeah, it's not great. But why is it happening now? Chasing profit in unaffordable cities are not exactly new American phenomena, but they have recently been compounded by a gutting of scientific funding and a general push of anti-intellectualism. Last year's White House budget proposal called for cutting the National Institute of Health by around 40% and the National Science Foundation by more than half. Congress ultimately rejected most of those cuts at the start of this year, but by then, a lot of the damage was already done. Between the hiring freezes, buyout offers, and great terminations, more than 15,000 people left federal science agencies in 2025 alone. According to the American Institute of Physics, the government's physical sciences workforce shrank by 12% in a single year, compared to 8% over the previous 26 years combined. And that's before we even got to the people entering the top of the talent pool. Tightened entry for high-end researchers and students coming from abroad has meant smaller classes and less funding, and ultimately less manpower actually doing research. Now, international student enrollment fell 17% last fall, with graduate enrollment, which is generally the people that actually staff research labs, falling by 12%. There is also something of a soft power element in all of this as well. Doing research in America, getting an Ivy League education, or building a startup in Silicon Valley was for a long time seen as the goal by ambitious people from across the globe. Immigrant researchers have won about 40% of America's science Nobel Prizes since the year 2000. To date, that image still certainly exists, but it has been, tainted. And at the very least, a lot of people are now shopping around for alternatives. But alright, I know what you were saying. So what? A few people are going to do non-economically viable research somewhere else on someone else's dime. Who cares? At least we still have the profitable research, right? Well, in a roundabout way, that profit motive has actually started working against us. Researchers developing technology for dumb reasons like the good of humanity have long been drawn to private institutions where they can make much more money. But their work is naturally more closed off and focused more on developing products rather than building a foundation of scientific understanding. This has been a trade-off forever, with graduate students picking between working in industry and working in academia. Someone with their PhD is every bit as susceptible to the cost of living pressures as anybody else, and arguably more so exposed to their student debt. In many instances, it's to the point where the only people that can afford to remain as career academics are people who have rich parents to fund their life. It's not great, but it gets worse. The market opportunities have become so great that even tenured professors at high-end schools are making the jump. The Atlantic reported more than 80 current and former professors at schools like Stanford, Maryland, and UT Austin have left or taken leave to join OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, and Google DeepMind, including the chair of Berkeley's Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department. As one Arizona State professor put it, "I'm joining Anthropic is the new meme right now," which isn't great, but it gets worse. This is ultimately even more resources going to push this particular new technology forward within these companies. But it also means that their teaching isn't going to become accessible to new students coming through these institutions, students that may in turn have developed something different and potentially even more revolutionary. So even though this particular group hasn't actually left America, they have still kind of taken their brainpower out of the American ecosystem, which means that they won't be around to teach new students who could in turn build up a wider foundation of research. That might be a great short-term deal for these companies, but it's likely coming at the long-term cost of wider progress in their respective fields. Now, I know this all might sound a bit wishy-washy, but developing scientific knowledge kind of depends on a hierarchy of personnel. At the bottom are students learning how a field works, and in the middle is a group that may keep researching or may apply their learnings in industry. And at the very top are the thought leaders at the cutting edge of their particular branch of a discipline. They know their stuff, usually after decades of research, consulting, and advising other people up and down this hierarchy. Today, we are losing a lot of the people entering at the bottom, and bidding away the people at the top into siloed institutions, all while pricing out the people in the middle. If we don't maintain it, this can also very easily create a bad feedback loop. Colleges can't offer courses, so top students look abroad, so there is less research getting done, so there is less funding coming in, so more professors start looking for work abroad too, add less money for entire fields on top of this, and it really could get pretty bad. The good news is that so far, we are still pretty early on in this process. Most people anywhere on Earth would still happily take a place at a university like MIT. But the trend is not our friend, and these fields naturally compound on themselves. But this also raises a pretty fair question. Is this actually a problem? Sure, we have attracted a lot of talent at every level of this pyramid from overseas for a long time, but we also have a lot of very smart people right here at home. The acceptance rates at top colleges, research firms, grants, and jobs in these fields are legendarily slim. And sometimes the difference between the average smart person and a world-leading researcher is just getting the opportunity to do the research in the first place. If countries like China really are investing serious money into taking back top talent, there is a reasonable argument that giving these slots to international students has effectively disenfranchised an almost as good American hopeful, all to train people who may end up furthering the scientific ambitions of an economic and potentially militaristic rival. It's a not unreasonable concern that is made worse by the already existing trend of reversing brain drain. Now, it's easy to get a little bit conspiratorial here and assume that they are sending over spies to steal our intellectual property. And well, in certain cases that does happen. But the much larger problem is also much more simple. In the past, the vast majority of purely self-interested STEM graduates from almost all countries in the world would choose to stay and work in America because of, well, the opportunities, the quality of life, and the extra money that I've spent half this video yapping about. This was especially true for students coming from developing countries. But now, fewer are staying. From China in particular, around 90% of their STEM PhD graduates used to still be living and working in America years after finishing their degrees. But today, according to the National Science Foundation's most recent tracking, that is down to just 76%. Now obviously, that is still a majority, but it also means that the share leaving has jumped by about 140%. On top of all of the self-inflicted headwinds we have put on this trend, China is pouring money into facilitating the reversal. Its flagship recruitment effort, a program it has never officially announced, reportedly offers returning researchers signing bonuses that can reach $700,000 plus help buying a home. So even in the complete absence of any sinister intentions, normal students just following the best available opportunities for themselves could easily end up on this path. and this is genuinely causing some big hits. The founder of Moonshot AI, Yang Zhilin, got his PhD at Carnegie Mellon. And well, his Kimi models are kind of moonshotting our domestic AIs at the moment, which even though we may not like it, is a major component of our economy now. It's happening outside of AI too. The mathematician Zhang Tong, famous for a landmark proof about the gaps between prime numbers, left UC Santa Barbara last year for a university in Guangzhou. Now, I really can't tell you what the right answer is here, and for every argument about furthering a rival science, there is a counter-argument about international students over-contributing to the funding of these educational institutions in the first place. They poured about $43 billion into the US economy last year alone, but genuinely, I'd be interested to see your guys' thoughts in the comments. I can't see that going badly. For what it's worth, if this really is an adversarial zero-sum game, then well, we are still taking more smart people from them than they are from us. What's more is that if we really wanted to avoid this dilemma in the first place, we should probably double down on K-12 education for the domestic talent pipeline, but that's a whole different video. The point is, on either side of this debate, we should probably be trying really hard to reduce the exodus of the talent that is already here. This is also, let's be honest, a very emotional argument, where it's all too easy to dismiss one side as racist for raising legitimate concerns, and it's also very easy for actual racist ideas to piggyback on some valid criticism. The unfortunate reality is that companies know this, and they know the emotions of this debate will make for a great get-out-of-jail-free card. So go and watch this video next to find out why the fear of China has become such an effective tool for the AI industry specifically. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.